Good evening from London. Welcome to Piers Morgan Uncensored. Sir Keir Starmer may well be the next British Prime Minister. Labour leaders a hearty lead in the polls. After 13 years of Tory rule with 3 Prime Ministers in one chaotic year recently, his path to power is clear. But he still has to prove he knows what matters to the British people. And today, I believe he made a massive miscalculation. He's reportedly briefed his top team to avoid talking about social issues, woke issues, because apparently the public doesn't care about them. He couldn't be more wrong. The public does.
The political equivalent of soggy cardboard in a designer suit has been utterly torn apart, not by the Conservatives, not by the electorate, and certainly not by his own long-absent spine, missing since 2015, but by Piers Morgan of all people. Yes, that Piers Morgan whose fame is built on mourning. Show feuds, now packing more clarity and punch in one interview than an entire party platform ever managed. When someone whose stock is outrage for hire dissects you this effortlessly, it's a glaring sign the leadership experiment has failed. And perhaps it's finally time to dust off that retirement plan you promised yourself before Brexit incinerated the last shreds of credibility.
Today, Starmer dramatically upped the ante by announcing that he will resign if police find him over the apparently illicit beer and curry soiree that he shared with his campaign staff. It's an amazingly high-stakes gamble, and of course would put Johnson under huge pressure to do the same if he does have to quit. But I suspect hypocrisy and lying might finish them both off, whatever happens. Boris broke the rules he set for the rest of us and then repeatedly lied about it. Starmer said that Boris must resign when police investigated. Now the same thing's happened to him, but he hasn't resigned. He just committed to resign.
Let's begin with Starmer's remarkable knack for promising the moon and delivering less than a Royal Mail stoppage. A man who rallies like a fire-breathing revolutionary, but administrates like a retired school governor ecstatic to clutch a new clipboard, ticking boxes with the enthusiasm of a tepid committee meeting, yet somehow convinces himself that facing Piers Morgan, the patron saint of shouty chaos and ambush interviews, would be a cosy sofa chat, a warm cup of tea, and a nod of approval. That makes his downfall all the more poetic, because when overconfidence collides with televised confrontation, all that remains is a vacant stare, a mangled soundbite, and those slightly crooked ambitions quietly collapsing in on themselves.
You know, he's had 4 years. He can't tell you what he would do differently because he doesn't have a plan. And if you don't have a plan, you can't deliver any change. Nothing will change for the better, whereas I can do that for people.
Here's what I say at the end, is that Keir Starmer has resolutely not delivered on his pledges to do an interview with me for Piers Morgan Uncensored. You've now done 2 in the space of the last year. I appreciate that. I think you do put yourself up to be held to account more than he.
Starmer faced Piers Morgan with all the assurance of a soggy paper bag in a monsoon, seemingly convinced this was his defining moment. What happened, though, resembled less a leadership interview and more like someone attempting to teach algebra while being showered with fish fingers. As each question turned into a grim round of political twister, Starmer twisted left, leaned centre-right, flailed desperately to avoid accountability, and finally toppled onto the familiar map-marked "don't know," blinking in astonishment as the moment slipped irretrievably through his grasp.
Why do you trust Vladimir Putin?
I trust him more than I trust Keir Starmer.
Really?
Yeah.
You trust Vladimir Putin?
I trust him more
than Keir Starmer?
I trust him more than I trust Joe Biden. I trust him more than I trust Donald Trump. Hold on, let me finish the statement.
I can't read past Starmer. You would trust Vladimir Putin more than Keir Starmer?
I wouldn't trust any of them if they told me what day it was today without checking. I don't trust automatically any politician. I check the facts. We lived through an era and were sacked because of the result of it, in which we were told certain things by our own leaders that turned out to be blatant.
Piers Morgan barely lifted a finger. Starmer crumpled like a deck chair in a hurricane, one moment strutting as a proud Remainer, the next cautiously patting the Brexit unicorn, as if presiding over a petting zoo of sheer fantasy. Question him on policy and he flares up like a Christmas tree abandoned in the attic since 2009, charred, hopelessly knotted and barely alive. while you can almost hear his convictions gasping under the unbearable weight of attempting to satisfy everyone and ending up appealing to absolutely no one.
Legislation, because you're hiding behind the process.
The Labour Party
Why
said,
don't you do what the other candidates do and tell? Don't Labour members have a right, as they decide whether to vote for you or not? They want to know where your money's coming from.
I've been asked that many times. I've said it's coming from trade unions, from crowdfunding, from individual donations.
Who's your biggest donor?
It's coming from those three. One of my biggest donors was put up on the website, I think, yesterday.
The man performs more U-turns than a drunken sat-nav. First for nationalisation, then against it, then vaguely for it again. But only if the stars align and Mercury goes retrograde. So Starmer's principles feel less like a coherent ideology and more like a choose-your-own-adventure where every route ends in disappointment and an awkward Twitter apology. And here's the ultimate humiliation. Piers Morgan, a man who once lost a debate to a Greggs vegan sausage roll, still tore Starmer apart like a soggy Bakewell tart without asking a single trick question, just plain human ones like what do you actually stand for, leaving Starmer looking like a child caught sneaking the last biscuit. His response is a symphony of vague stammering, more pauses than a broken Spotify playlist, with that permanent look of regret reserved for anyone who realises far too late they should never have sat down at all.
Constantly ransacked from Roald Dahl's books to the James Bond novels to avoid offending an imaginary cult. It means ordinary people having to hesitate before using perfectly normal words like woman or bonkers or mother because they've been browbeaten into thinking it'll cause offence. It means biological males can destroy women in sport, and gender categories are being abolished at award ceremonies, resulting, as we saw at the Brits, in no women getting nominated at all. It means we're smeared as transphobic for thinking it's stark raving mad that a male rapist can identify as a woman to get a place in a woman's prison.
Starmer's public image is like staring at a jammed printer, dull, mechanical, locked on default. When prompted to speak sincerely, he plunges into policy jargon, like expecting heat from a fridge. Even Piers Morgan looked perplexed, questioning whether he was leader of the opposition or an undercooked rice pudding. Scrutinising the government has turned into a performance of "I'll get back to you after a committee review," offering answers so nebulous they could vanish mid-sentence, each line soaked in ambiguity, rolled in indecision, and fried in utter irrelevance.
The Jeremy Corbyn era said he thought Corbyn would make a good Prime Minister. That's a blotch on his thought process because Corbyn would have been a total mad far-left disaster. But interestingly, and I think encouragingly, Starmer is not so intransigent in his views that he's not prepared to change. The example being the issue of trans women in women's sport. He started off by saying that all trans women are women and should be treated as such.
Even the violent rapists. It's a problem.
Exactly.
Those edge cases.
You and I completely agree about this. It's obviously preposterous. But it's interesting to watch him change positions, and now I think he now says 99.
The issue isn't that Starmer lies, it's that he can't lie with even a shred of confidence. Most politicians lie like jazz, smooth and effortless. Starmer lies like he's misplaced the instrument. Ask him about the economy, and he mumbles vague fiscal responsibility. Ask about immigration, and he stiffens into a glitchy homage to Theresa May's broken robot dance. The true humiliation? Piers Morgan didn't even have to try. Just being in the room made Starmer crumble like a rice cake in a puddle, probably heading home later, rehearsing eye contact with his reflection, quietly wondering where it all went wrong. Spoiler, it probably started the instant he believed Sir granted him immunity from scrutiny.
The Brexit deal that built a trade barrier down the Irish Sea and marked off Northern Ireland from the rest of the UK, having repeatedly assured us that wouldn't happen would be totally unacceptable. It was a fudge then and a betrayal, and it was never going to stick. And nationalists have now moved to exploit that vacuum. If the UK is going to stay together, and I hope it does, it needs strong leaders in Westminster who earn the public's trust. Instead, we can't trust the current.
Starmer constructs a political platform on grand promises and abandons them quicker than a Tory minister DMing lobbyists past midnight. He campaigns like someone wandering the ambition aisle but left his backbone in the car, yet insists he's the grown-up among a room of toddlers. Watching him face Piers Morgan, who's never met a controversy he couldn't dominate, was like witnessing plain yogurt grumble that water is too spicy, completely outshone by a megaphone set to mildly snide.
The information got all the evidence, not only that was available at the time, but all the evidence that's available since then. National security has to come first. I think the decision by the Home Secretary was the wrong decision, and I think it was a rushed decision. And I think it left out of account the interests of the newly born child who's tragically died.
A lot of people have a...
Starmer's leadership style is basically a clipboard with a superiority complex, commanding like someone who skimmed a manual and forgot it, projecting toughness in press releases, but collapsing the moment a real question lands. One look from Piers Morgan had him blinking in Morse code for "please make this stop." He seems to believe elections are won by osmosis, just hover near not Boris and Voyle votes. But being not Boris isn't enough when you're also absent, uninspiring, and barely alive looking. Boris was a walking political explosion. Starmer is a political screensaver. The sort of man who could enter a pub and make the jukebox pause out of sheer second-hand awkwardness.
The job of a leader to inspire all of the people to have trust in him, not just some of the people, not just the people he likes, not just the people on his party or the people he wants. It is his job as a leader to have every single person in the country believe that he cares about the issue and he's doing something actively to fix it. Instead, what Keir did was stand up and do the absolute opposite. Shut down any legitimate concerns, tell people they don't have a voice, tell people nothing's going to change, is going to stay exactly the way it is. And let me tell you something. I want to make this very clear. There's a lot of people in the world who would rather go to jail and have a warm bed and 3 square meals a day than watch their children die. There's a lot of people who would rather go to jail than watch their society collapse in real time around them. There's a lot of people who would really rather go to jail than feel unsafe to walk the street at night ever again. These are people who have lived in the same place for a very long time. They have a vested interest in this geographical location. And without political solutions being offered, I don't know how hubristic you must be to sit and expect anything other than what...
Labour under Starmer feels like a theme park serving only safety briefings. You anticipate motion, thrills, maybe a policy loop-de-loop, and instead get a helmet while someone reads aloud from a compliance manual. When Piers Morgan prodded him, he didn't feel the sting. He lifted the lid and discovered only a sigh and an apologetic shrug. Those long pauses before each answer aren't reflection. They're his brain buffering like dial-up. Somewhere a fax machine whirring helplessly inside his head. Worst of all, he truly believes centrist mulch is leadership, blandness is strategy, like a motivational speaker for people who quit before starting, so every word lands like a TED Talk, sponsored by lukewarm tap water.
The one person I've not interviewed is Keir Starmer, or any of his senior shadow cabinet ministers. What are they scared of? The Labour Party is based 2.8 miles away from his studio. His front benchers have an open invitation to come on to debate all of this stuff, as well as their plans for running the country. But so far, they've repeatedly rejected all invitations. If you want to run the country, you should really stop ducking interviews, because the last guy that ran the country, he ducked interviews. Let me take a...
And God help us when Starmer attempts passion, because you can pinpoint the exact second his inner scriptwriter flips the switch. Time to be authentic. He furrows his brow, straightens his tie, and out comes a sentence so beige you forget what language it was even in. It's not that he lacks fire, he keeps it chained in a cupboard labelled break glass in case of polling crisis. Meanwhile, Piers Morgan sits there, eyebrows practically doing the conga, as Starmer struggles against all odds to persuade him, and presumably himself, that he's ready to lead. Lead what exactly? A book club where dissent is forbidden? A mime troupe of centrists? The only thing he's steering is a nationwide nap. And vision? None. His grand plan seems to amount to a bit less bad, maybe, depending on feedback. If transformation means trading one uninspiring man in a suit for another in a slightly different suit, Starmer's your man. But if you want leadership with bite, you might as well vote for a Roomba. At least it moves.